The elongation of bolts was measured by micrometers during this operation. Ball-shaped straps were firmly installed on the main cables in such a way that the cylindrical shape of the cable and the spherical shape of the balls were maintained. There was a total of 90 straps on the cables. The pulling apart of the main cables. Next in the order of work was to pull apart the main cables. Each cable was pulled sideways from 21 different points to form the spindle shape. As the main cable started its sideward swing, due to the lubricant, the saddles rotated smoothly. The time taken to swing each cable was about 3 hours, far quicker than was originally expected. The steel trusses for the monitor roof were assembled right under the main cables and then raised. "27 trusses were used for the monitor roof. The heaviest weighed 4 tons, and each was fixed onto a ball and socket joint on the main cables. Hanging members and roof. In March 1964, the installation of the hanging members was started. The hanging members posed many difficult problems. No two were of the same dimensions or shape. The next problem was the method of fixing. The curve of the main cables would change as the beams and roofing were installed. Therefore, the hanging members could not be fixed in one piece. For this reason, pin joints were used in the beams. For those beams in the central parts where curves were nearer to parabolas, 2 joints were used. And for those nearer the main columns where curves were considerably different from parabolas, only 1 pin joint per beam was used. As the time allocated was short, and also as an added safety precaution, as many as 30,000 temporary stagings were put up to install the hanging members. The installation of the hanging members was started from both main cable and grandstand ends, and they were connected with pin joints at the center. If the beams had been first installed in the midspan, the resultant sag of the cables would have made it difficult to fix the other beams onto the cables. So the work was started at 1/3 of the distance from the main columns and was moved simultaneously in opposite directions. If the roof had been left with only the hanging members, it would not have been rigid enough. In order to give more rigidity to it, some 38 bracing cables were strung through the web of hanging members, which were anchored into the perimeter concrete. In order to facilitate the passing of wire rope through the holes in the beam web, devices made of sheet metal were temporarily put on each of the holes. bracing cables were 44 millimeters in diameter. The bracing cables were tensioned by using hydraulic jacks on both ends. They were stretched to 10 tons first, later to 20 tons, and then fixed. While this work was in progress, the covering of the roof was begun. Steel plates for the roof covering were 4.5 millimeters thick and were welded together. Transverse expansion joints were provided at the copings, and longitudinal expansion was made possible by bolting the roofing onto the purlins. And so the roof gradually took its final form. Ceiling and interior finishing. In June 1964, with only 2 months left for completion, work was started on ceiling and interior finishing. The underside of the roof was sprayed with asbestos to provide insulation against heat and dew forming before the ceiling was placed. The ceiling material was made of 1.6 millimeter expanded aluminium, on which was placed acoustic glass wool. To render the main cables fireproof, casings were placed around them and grouted. As the work was completed on the ceiling, the temporary stagings were removed. And the swimming pools and diving platforms were finished. August 5th, 1964 was the momentous day on which the pool was filled with water. On August 31st, 1964, only a mere 19 months after the first clod of earth was turned on the site, this monumental building, the National Stadium, was completed.